Hello.
Hello, Glen.
Hi. How's it going there, Jared?
Man, so much stuff, man.
Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
New Age chicken coop.
Oh, that was your recent post.
Yeah. That's what they're doing. They are introducing the Messiah. And most people think that it's Barack, but he's just the front. It's the Messiah. Basically, you're dealing with a situation where the best black man they could put together was Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
And his time is now up. Power must be transferred to a female. The female would mean that the power is being transferred to the two daughters of Barack Obama, who would be comparable to the two sons of Akhenaten and Queen Tai, Smenkeri and Tutankhamun. So Barack has two daughters. That could, in fact, mean that they are basically being appointed as the leaders, the future leaders.
So what's the story with Chelsea Clinton?
White woman has to wait for her mother to be president. Can't have anything until the mother becomes president, and all of this may be to lead back to that. The other possibility is that Tiger has a baby girl who he named Sam. Sam is the letters that you add to the word Christ and make it Christmas.
Yeah.
And Christmas is next week. So keep an eye out between now and Easter for a new Messiah. And your candidates are the two young girls, which means Michelle would be like the mother queen in waiting who rules while the kids grow up, as happened back in those days with Hatchie puts. That is a code word for Utah. And the two girls would be in waiting. The other possibility is Tiger Woods' daughter, Sam. But my view is that neither one should be. That, in fact, the real intended people who are supposed to be in that position are the two boys that belong to Ambika.
Whoa.
That's who was intended to be by creation. And what we're dealing with now is the Creator trying to position his female slave in place.
Yeah, almost, you make it sound like almost like some like Antichrist type of thing, like that whole scenario.
The whole story is about an Antichrist. The first one who takes the position has to be relieved at a later date and replaced by the one the Creator wants in place. In other words, back in the time of Akhenaten, two sons were born to Queen Tai. The first one, Smenkeri, who has hair in his name, like a rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
He was made king and by the priest, A-Y, and then a year later told that he was more needed in the military, that he had to go lead the military on their foreign ventures, that he should temporarily hand over the power to his brother, whose name was Tutankhamun. Mm-hmm. And he did. Tutankhamun became pharaoh at the age of 12. Now, while Smenkheri was out fighting the war, then, and Tutankhamun was pharaoh, he was too young to really make decisions, so Queen Tai and the seer I basically ruled over Egypt. When Tutankhamun was 18, Smenkheri was back looking for his original post, and the priest wouldn't let Tutankhamun give it back, and instead he fostered a war between the two brothers, a war that took their lives, both of them, leaving the priest in charge. And he became the pharaoh. But being an old person, he died shortly thereafter, passing the power on to the military general of the day, whose name I mentioned on the site before is a play on the word Hebrew. So, who's in the kitchen with Dinah? Who's in the kitchen? I know. Somebody's playing on the old banjo.
That name Hebrew, what does it really mean?
He's brewing. At the original transfer of power between the two sons of Abraham was done in return for a mess of potage. That's the wording used in the Bible. A mess of potage is a fish stew.
Yeah.
A fish stew is what you're about to eat in Long Island.
Huh.
The stew is not going to be cooked. The fish are going to be swimming. But at one stage of the game, when there's so much mud, they can't swim anymore. And everybody's under the Nova. While in Ontario and at Lake Michigan and Huron, the toilet will be flushed. And the coprolites, the Ontario Provincial Police, they call them coprolites because they are not heavyweights like the military, and they are professional policemen, manufactured for the job. And their job, policemen, is that of the pawn on the chessboard. The military and the priests are on the back row, along with the bureaucrats at either end of the line on the back row.
And what about, like, knights?
Well, the knights are the military.
Oh, okay.
The bishops, of course, are the ecclesiastics. The king is cosmetic, can't go anywhere, can only turn around in circles. He can move one square at a time in any direction, but the power resides in the queen, who can go anywhere, and that was the time of Akhenaten. The queen was Queen Tai. Tai ran the world, for her son Akhenaten, and then ran the world for her grandsons, Menkaure and Tutankhamun. But she was, in fact, a vassal of the priest. And he was working for a hidden seer who was called Amenhotep. I call him Dr. Gaucher.
Gaucher.
Gaucher, the word in French means to ruin. You don't run a place, you ruin it. Yeah. But if you look at the word Gaucher, G-A-C-H-E in French, and you take the H and just continue the top part of the H with what would be the accent on the E, accent aigu on the E, that turns the H into an R. And if you move it to next to the G, it's really Dr. Grace. Grace is the word used for God.
Our Lady of Grace?
Yeah. Redemption through grace.
The G-race.
Yeah. Grace and favor mansions are given to the favorites of the kings and queens. They're brought in to live in a circle close enough to be on call any time. And they're provided with residences. In England, they're called grace and favor.
Yeah, I found interesting, I was looking up, because you'll do that, you'll just put like a whole list of words.
Yeah.
It was like a review. And one group of words I was looking up was frankincense, gold, and myrrh.
Yeah.
And, when you look at incense, they use it as like a prayer, religious thing, and use it for sacrifice. And you have gold, and I was looking up all types of things with gold. You'll find interesting things like a guy named Oliver Goldsmith. He wrote a poem called "She Stoops to Conquer," and another poem he wrote it's called "Deserted Village." I didn't get into those poems, but just from the titles, I think I have an idea what he was talking about. And
recoil. Stoops to conquer is like taking a step back to jump. Everything is basically linked to, it's all about oil, but not the oil in the ground.
So there's no L, so it's all about the 10.
Yeah, exactly. And gold is, of course, old in there, and log is the key word. So they keep a log. The old people keep a log of everything that is happening. And the gays in the Republican Party call themselves the Log Cabin Republicans.
Oh, sorry. But yeah, and with the myrrh too is interesting too, because these are the things that the priest brought to Jesus, and myrrh was like made in the land of Punt, in Somalia. So that's like an allegory of that priesthood. When I remember you saying they left the land of Punt, and you call them Atlanteans, and they took
a car to leave the land of
Madagascar, right?
Yeah. And on Madagascar there is an animal called a lemur, In French, le mur, the wall.
Wall. Oh.
And there's another animal that is like a hog, a fence hog, or what's the word? Fennec or something. Something like that. In any event, it's all linked to symbolism for who they are.
Yeah, and they have another thing I looked up too. I ran across was things about like the palm tree and
Arnold Palmer, Arnie Palmer.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of. There's like a few.
That's a code for
the Templar.
Tiger Woods.
Oh, really?
Well, it's Arnie Palm 2. ER is 2.
Yeah, yeah.
So if he's a Palmer,
he's
the second one around. So Palmer was the first great one, and Tiger is the first bad one.
Because Palmer was.
Now, I don't believe for a minute that Tiger had any girlfriends among prostitutes.
That's what a lot of, I'm hearing like the conversations of the people. They're all saying, "Oh, his wife left him," and blah blah blah, and I see it like it's a cover.
Yeah, all it is theater.
Yeah. and he they got a good picture of him looking upset.
Him, his wife, his mother-in-law, his mother, they're all playing a game.
Yeah.
and the media is sending it to the people like gospel.
Yeah, there's a movie with De Niro. It's a movie where like they basically fake a whole war, and they show how like the government works with like Hollywood, and they just make a whole. To the people, it seems like it's real, but it's all just made in.
Was that shaking the dog's tail?
Yeah, wag the dog.
Wag the dog's tail.
Yeah. So I think that's
same thing. That's basically what they do. They have actors, lifetime acting. Their own life is their play, and the media feeds it to the people.
Yeah. But yeah, with Palmer, I found 3 guys. One guy named Edward Henry Palmer, Erastus Doe Palmer, and Ray Palmer. And one guy, Erastus, he was a sculptor like you, but in the stones. And he made some bas reliefs and stuff. One was called The Landing of the Pilgrims, and I know that's really symbolic. And the morning and the evening. And the other guy, Ray Palmer, this is what caught my eye. Ray Palmer, he was a clergyman, and he made a lot of church hymns that they sing. And these church hymns, the ones that they listed were like ones that were known and like all over Christian church. And I know these hymns, like one called Unlost Paradise, the Holy Communion, the Remember Me. These are My Faith Looks Up to Thee. I think these are like messages.
My faith looks up to the E.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's what they're waiting for. That's the Messiah. You
saw the picture of the Medusa up on an island on a pedestal, and the priest and the nun. The priest is bringing the box of gold. The nun is writing in a book. Did you ever see that picture?
No. Who? He wrote that?
Yeah, I put it on the net one day.
Oh, yeah, you put it. I think the other day you put a link to a picture, but it didn't work for me. The link was
that was the one on Dr. Gaucher. But I'm told that nobody else could get it because it's in my file rather than on the net.
Yeah, it's not. You'd have to like upload it or something on.
Yeah, and I don't know how to do any of that stuff. So
you have
I'll have to wait till you're here.
Yeah, but you did all that stuff on your website.
No, the webmaster does it.
Oh, wow! So he must have.
I fired him.
Oh, so
that's why we don't have a website.
Well, you think he was intentionally screwing things up?
Partly, yes.
Oh.
Intentionally doing what he was told, partly. Intentionally holding back on things, partly. And intentionally screwing things up, partly.
I think he probably had a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah. He was Eastern European from Slovakia, and he was living here.
Oh.
He was a pain in the ass. And one day he said he couldn't afford to live on welfare. And I said, well, go see a psychiatrist. Tell him you believe what I'm telling you. And they'll declare you insane and provide you with housing. And he did. And he lives now in public housing in a place called Cardinal, which is right on the edge of the St. Lawrence River, where the first wave that comes down will drown him.
Oh, wow.
That's where they sent him.
They're just trying to get rid of his ass.
Yeah, and the people who lived in that housing were all old people, and one person told him, and he repeated it to me, he said, how did you manage to get that apartment? That's been left open for years, as if it was being held for somebody important.
Oh.
Yeah. Somebody they want to drown.
Oh, man. So what's he doing now? He still lives there?
I don't know. I see occasionally hints of him on the net. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't pretend to be me, because he has access to all my computer stuff, so he can in fact post as if I was posting.
Yeah, man.
Just like Bell Canada.
Shit, man.
Everybody can post except me.
Wow.
When I want to post, they want me to be on a very limited number of recipients, not open to the world like I was on my site.
I just don't. Sometimes some people what's the motive of some people? I really why?
They're paid.
Huh?
They're paid. There are people, a lot of people, who work on the net who receive a salary. And there's another group of people who are in monasteries, who are cloistered monasteries and given a computer, put in their room and say, hey, pretend you are whatever you need to pretend you are in order to move our point of view along.
I would love to just take a tour of a monastery and just
you go to Caspian, Carpathian, I should say.
Yeah, that's another word I gotta.
Carpathian Mountains. There's the path for you. Got a car and a path in it.
And just see. I just want to see just a terminal of all computers.
Yeah.
Just nothing and priests.
I went in when I was on sales into one of those monasteries because I had to go look at their stencil duplicator that was down. And when you walk with the Mother Superior, she's got a big bell in her hand. You're following behind. She's ba-ding, ba-ding, ba-ding. And all the doors get closed as you walk down the hallway,
Oh, wow. That's a little... Huh. Yeah, well, you just remind me with that mountain, when you say... I just thought about Mount Sinai, and you look at the peninsula that's between, looks like a peace sign.
Yeah.
What are they saying? Peace, bro?
Two in one. And that's where they broke the land bridge that turned the Red Sea into a sea.
Yeah, because
it was a river.
Yeah, and they say that because it's like there's just so many caves over there. They say that in the caves they find like inscriptions on the wall, like from like early Christian. So you could tell these are like Essenes living in mountains, and back then, all those early Christian.
The coming of a heat age with Alder Amin is not the first time. And therefore, there was a time in the past, on a number of occasions, that human beings had to retreat underground because it was, in fact, too hot to live above ground.
Oh, wow. That means they're prepared for this.
Of course. Alder Amin, if it's coming now, since everything is repeated every 25,800 years in what they call a precession, it means that it's time for that to happen again. And this time, the difference is when they go underground, they're not going to be escaping because the system is going to light the nova, which will burn the ground as well. But in the past, that would have been the normal thing. It's too hot to be on the surface. You build living quarters underground. You go through the Middle East, you'll find 3-story buildings in town squares underground. That's not anywhere close to the Moho discontinuity.
Yeah.
The space they have there, since the Moho discontinuity has to be at least 30 miles in thickness. That means you can stand on the floor, if you could see from the floor to the ceiling, and the space is 30 miles. So you can make large living quarters in that amount of space. Bigger than most cities.
So yeah, I think about it, like even those movies I watched years ago. One movie was Vin Diesel is Tales of Riddick, and they show a scene where like the whole surface of the planet just gets scorched. So this is
well, floods and scorched earth is part of our history.
Yep, fire and water.
Yeah. And it's going to happen again, and this time it's going to be totally managed, although I suspect that it's not the first time they manage a direct hit, that the land bridge at the Bosphorus would have been, in fact, one of their targets for something like a blind thrust at some time in the past. The land bridge between Africa, Somalia, and Yemen there would basically have been destroyed in the same way. The land bridge between, Amen and the other side, the Arabian Peninsula, would have been destroyed to cover up the Garden of Eden, that type of stuff. It's a weapon of war and a modus operandi that one can ascribe to Neanderthalers at least 3 times in the past. So to think that they're not going to do it a 4th time is basically playing with prayer.
Oh man! How do you remember all the details?
I lived it. I know that's hard to grasp.
No, I that's not, that's not hard to grasp. When you can remember.
It's a matter of unlocking that memory, which is basically locked every time you start over, and finding the mechanism to access that storeroom, which resides in the spine. And once you do, then it comes pouring out. Yeah, so slowly at the beginning, and as it moves the rocks out of the way, it kind of gets bigger.
Yeah, man. It's right now. It's like slow for me. Like,
well, you're only 27?
26.
26.
And it's coming out. It's coming out, but it's not
not a flood yet.
Yeah.
It will be.
Yeah, but I am getting it a lot.
Unless you're dead, you can't shut that door. Once it's open and the water is flowing, you can't put the rocks back.
Yeah, man. But I'm still trying to figure out what's this beard. I just been growing my beard out a little bit.
Yeah.
It's starting to get annoying, man.
Don't let the beard grow too long. You'll start to look like Ayatollah. and people will think you're coming to collect tax.
I don't know. I think I might just have like a goatee or something. I don't know. I don't have. I can't get a full one because it like grows weird.
Yeah. I couldn't grow anything until I was in my 50s.
I'm still trying to figure out like what exactly, like, is it helping me sense anything? I mean,
well, your beard won't help you sense things. You sense things from your spine, so it has to be from the rear.
But I know, but hair is sense, like, you have hair, people who have hair on, the arms, it helps them sense.
Yeah,
cold.
But that's pretty local stuff. In the old days, when you had hair like all the other animals, that would have been different. You would have had connections all over the body, because the hair was like a cat that has hair everywhere. But the sensory hair that function the most are open to the wind, and they are close to the spine. For an animal, it's on their back, and the back is up. For us, since we walk on 2 feet now, there's a basic directional situation there for it receiving information, but there should be no blockage for you getting the information. If your hair is long and it's near your spine, all it has to do is travel a short distance. My testing with the cell these days is to try to figure out how far away can one be and communicate the way cats can communicate. That's still up for grabs. I don't know.
I think I've heard that theory before, how, like, people can be around each other and almost like, I guess, like thoughts. I don't know. I don't want to say thoughts, but like.
Well, this morning I went to do my regular morning email, and I had absolutely no concept of anything I would write. and I sat there looking at my computer, and nothing came to mind. And then I started sneezing, only to realize there was a cat between my legs who basically jumped out of the way as soon as I started sneezing. And the first thing that came to mind immediately as the cat looked at me, was New Age chicken coop. New Age chicken coop. And I turned around and said, that's where they've all been called for the meeting, not just the G8 or G20, but 190-some countries of the world. Why have they been called there? And then my head began to sing. And I said, I haven't heard this song in 60 years.
Yeah, that happens to me, man. What does that mean? When you'll just be, mind your own business, you'll hear a song that you haven't heard in so long.
Yeah, well, it's a connection to your spine that's taking place. Va berger, rassemblons-nous, allons voir le Messie. That means, go, shepherds, and assemble, go and see the new Messiah. And I said, that's what they're doing in Copenhagen, the Coop. And va berger, of course, was Fabergé, the Fabergé eggs. And in all my readings, Fabergé egg was always linked to a Swiss guy living in France. And then I do a little more research and I find out that, yeah, he designed the things, but they were fabricated in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And they were for the Queen of Russia. And berger, and you look at Scandinavian people and how many have Berg in their name, berger means shepherds. So the song was saying, go shepherds and unite or assemble, assemblons-nous, go meet your new Messiah. Well, in my lifetime, I don't remember a meeting of 190 leaders of the world, and the only thing that would attract them to Copenhagen would be the fact that they're on the verge of dying and they need a new Messiah. So immediately you jump and you think of Michelle Obama, because number one is never important, just cosmetic. Number two is the power. And her description applies to Queen Tai. From Tai to the two sons, from Michelle to her two daughters. So there has to be a link there. They were going to meet their Messiah, which would now be a male inside a female. So a pseudo-hermaphrodite. And then you expand the thing and you say, if they're going to give power to these women, where are they getting the power from? Well, it's then the role of the system to promote champions in almost every sport that are black, and the ultimate black man is Tiger Woods, and his daughter is called Sam. So the question is, who's the Messiah they're talking about? Is it, in fact, Tiger Woods' daughter, or is it Michelle's two daughters? 2 and 1 there. You got a choice.
So you think, I'm thinking like in the future, like people like Chelsea and, Barack Obama's daughter, they're all going to be like working together.
Yeah. Well, they are working together already. Whether people realize it or not, everything they see and hear is theater. And this is the troupe. I mean, this is the gang playing the roles out in public. And some play roles of bad guys, some play roles of good guys. They pretend to be enemies. And
yeah, like you look at the whole political scene. I don't really look at it as much as you, because it's like watching. Something's fake, so like I lose kind of interest in watching.
The key is always when the media is promoting it.
Yeah, then you know.
Then you know there's something behind. That's why I was wondering why they allowed you to put my tapes on Google. They had to have an ulterior motive. And it certainly was not to be to my benefit. Not from a gang that has go-go in its name.
Yeah.
No.
I know now when I see your name on the internet, it's sort of like it's associated with Alan Watt, like Yahoo.
Well, that probably was their purpose. Mm-hmm. Yahoo and Google and Netscape and Simpatico.
But you're not really like, I don't know.
All of them are all working together.
I think only a small community even really like pays attention to you as far as on the internet. From what I can see, doesn't really seem
well,
like...
not many people have the brains.
Yeah.
I mean, they think they have the brains because they're intelligent. Mm-hmm. But that's only half of what they need. Intelligence is only something that comes out of your head. Until you marry it up to where you come from, in your intuition and your spine, you're like a guy in a canoe in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean who doesn't know where he came from, has no idea where to row.
Mm-hmm. And that's why, like recently somebody told me, and we need sources of information. Me, I was like, you're the source inside your spine. That's the best source you can have. That's the truth right there.
Somebody that lived it before and knows about it can provide much more information that you can test in your own intuition and your own what people call gut instinct.
Yeah. Like I trust my gut instinct. It never leads me wrong.
Yeah.
Because
it basically is a hard way to get it, because it has to come through from the spine right through the body to get through your gut. But it's trying the best it can to tell you, don't make decisions without having all of the information.
Yeah.
And you cannot have all the information through reason. You must have more than your lifetime to gather the information. And if you don't have more than your lifetime, then you just don't have enough to say yes or no. If you get a book and somebody wrote what they want you to believe in the book, you can be led astray. Yeah. But if your spine speaks to you, if your instinct speaks to you, then it's got no role to play in diverting you from the truth.
Yeah, like when if I go over something, you know if they're just leading you astray, and sometimes I'll see a sentence that they say, and my memory will come up. Oh, and then it leads me to a whole bunch of other stuff. So.
That's why I never react. I shouldn't say never because sometimes I get pissed off.
Yeah, me too.
But never try to react to something that's happening. Take it in and analyze it. Give it time to mulch, and then you'll get what you should really know from what happened. Observe, analyze.
And conclude. But the conclude takes a while. So.
Yeah. Anytime you make snap decisions, chances are you're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's what I liked about your older posts. Like you never said this is the way that you said this is a work in progress. Like you would put the timeline of like, and then you would update it over time. Yeah. And I don't know. I guess even now you're still updating it.
It has to be left to the individual who reads it to make decisions. Most people would read it and say, this is too complicated for me, and set it aside. Other people would say, I don't understand it, so it's got to be wrong.
I see what you do. Like, I think I figured out like what may throw people off is the names that you give to individuals.
Well, each one is done to do exactly what you do. Take it, read up on that particular topic.
Yeah, the names are just telling you a history in itself of, I don't let the names throw me off, because people used to say, okay, it's Jesuits, so it's this group of people, but the names change for you. These guys have thousands of names.
Yeah. Hey, the cops used the phony accident to create an accident report to allow their bosses to collect more money from us. The minute you think of that project and you think of a name that matches, Copper, Nick, us. Nick is steal. Copper stole from us.
I know that name, Copper.
Copernicus.
Yeah, so like a historian? Or?
He's the guy who taught the truth about the fact that the sun, not the earth, was the center of the system that we live in. And that everything travels in an orbit. Orb. And in the old days, Christianity would demonstrate it by having a ball with a cross on top. That was their orb. It. The cross is it. The cross is have a tough life. It's a Philthought.
Yeah, I was reading another story too. Actually, I wasn't reading. I was listening to like an audio. It's a really good story. It's called The Heart of Darkness, and I realized something because you know how they talk about in the beginning there was darkness, and I used to think, okay, it's the Big Bang and everything, but then I realized they're talking about original black people too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, man.
And then in the beginning,
Jin, you had it.
So they genetically engineered the original black people. Begin, genie, come out of a bottle and do work for me.
Yes. So like Atlantis, this is where like that priesthood lived, right? And were they the priesthood that lived in
they lived on an island, and the island went underwater. The detail is the water was frozen.
Yeah.
when they went underground, it was nothing new to them. It was something that people had done in the history of humanity. Every time it got too hot to live on the surface, so what's the difference? If it's too hot or it's too cold, go underground. The difference is, this time they found a cone volcano. And traveling down the cone volcano, they came across the Moho discontinuity. And they said, hey, this is neat stuff, this basalt stuff. Easy enough to drill and make rooms in. It's below the sediment at the bottom of the oceans, therefore below the plates of the earth, not going to be affected by earthquakes, not going to be affected by tsunamis or floods of any kind.
What else do they use that material for, that basalt? What else is it used for?
Well, it's basically the stuff that lived. You are the salt of the earth.
Yep. Yeah.
This is the best part of you.
Mm-hmm.
And all the things that lived made that up. Yeah. So the best thing they could make out of it, I would suggest, was jewelry or vases, dishes out of which to eat and drink.
And
but it's kind of a glassy substance as well. So if rather than digging through it, you melt it, and you can fill up the cracks with the molten stuff as you're going through. So it becomes natural to have a nuclear type drill in front that as it travels, it melts and seals the walls around it. 20 feet in diameter tunnels, arriving at a fixed point, creates a geodesic structure. The fixed point can then be a town or like a station or meeting place.
I think about like this material, like this. Because part of the reason they want to send out these pseudo hermaphrodites out to outer space, they want to find other types of chemistry. You think they've already found?
Yeah. Well, what I think, and it's basically based on a bit of educated guess. Because I wasn't a chemist or a physicist or anything like that. But if you can get life out of fossilized excrement, is there not a possibility that you could get memories out of basalt? That you could get all of the knowledge learned by some method of extraction from basalt, since it is the salt of the earth. Yeah. It is everything that lived. Would that not in itself be a giant step forward in building a chemical computer? Add to the genius aspect of some idiot savants who lived and downloaded. You know, that the image of Medusa tells you exactly what they did. You have the head of a woman, and you have all these snakes penetrating the head, and that's basically the sign for wisdom.
Yeah.
So a lot of these snakes penetrating one head is basically telling you that they're assembling the knowledge in one place.
computer.
That can make decisions from that step forward. And then seeing these pictures of a priest and a nun praying to Medusa, a lot of times they veil her and make her look a lot like the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
So, the face is not what's important. The color is not what's important. The fact that it's veiled in some pictures, the fact that it has snakes penetrating its head, the fact that you have some imagery of masonry where an animal seems to be pulling things out of its own stomach. All of these things are suggestive. And not one gives the entire answer, but over time, the cumulative effect of it all is pretty clear.
Yep, that's for me, it's a cumulative effect, overseeing things, a number of things.
That's how evolution works. Mm-hmm. It gathers up evidence, and then it kills you. So you can't use it until you're born again.
Yeah.
And then it gathers up more evidence until it kills you again. And the more times you're reborn, the tougher you are.
Yeah. And that's what, when I look at the universe, some people say it's like something was created out of nothing, and that's not true because the information was gathered and it was stored, and
DNA was sent in from the outside by creation.
So DNA is always existed. It's like
well, that's why the word sand and the word land have DNA in it. It's basically just an accumulation of DNA. And that came about from creation. Was used by Creator. Some, like I say, misused. But Creator never invented DNA. It was there. He just rearranged it.
Yeah. And DNA is pretty interesting because DNA over time just updates itself over and over.
It remains and it gathers more and more and more and more knowledge.
Where did you get that term creation from when you started?
Well, just because of creator is a word that suggests a person.
Oh, so
knowing that it's not a person, the closest word. There's no perfect words in language. They made it to screw us up. But if I invented a word, nobody'd know what I was talking about. I mean, I could say ugh.
Yeah, but people see, and because I'm reading a book that's going into it's going into the philosophy of evolution, and people try to argue how we came to be and stuff. Like people say that we always try to attribute it to a thing, and it's either we came from a creator or a thing, and something like that. We came into existence from nothing, or we were always there and we just evolved or whatever. But I don't know. But in the book they say that it's I don't know. It's hard to explain like that. I guess I'll have to go over it again.
Well, there's a process, and people learn about two dimensions at the beginning. And then over time, the artist knew that two-dimension wasn't real and began showing things in three-dimension. That's when they learned perspective. How to paint in perspective was basically done with mirrors. Take a mirror focused on a building across the street, and you then project the image on your canvas, and then you outline it, and you find out that you can give things a three-dimensional look. Everybody learns through that process. Now we're going through a process of learning about the fourth dimension. And nobody teaches that in school. But yet, when you think of the Big Bang, and you think of the two options, open or closed universe, an open one keeps expanding until nothing has any impact on anything else. There's no more gravity, there's no more sun, there's no more anything, it just returns to darkness. The other option is it reaches a middle point, and then it starts to close. Now, if you do what the scientists who know about fourth dimension do, is they draw lines around this total universe. You'll never see it in real life, but you can imagine it.
Yeah, but even you imagining it is not what it really is. It's just a symbol in your mind.
Yeah, but it's what it lays out. The pattern it lays out is the pattern of a helix, creating the sign that looks like an 8 is basically the message, and the first half is basically from 0 to big to small, but the 8 on its side, infinity, tells you it only starts up again. Does the same thing. A double helix in genetics is the same thing. It's not a strand of one loop that ends. It just loops, goes back down, loops again, goes back down, loops again, goes back down. So the universe is something that is forever gaining experience and learning things along the way, shutting it down once its task is done, starting up again and going to a middle point and then shutting down. It's life. It's normal, and it's not done by some guy in a lab.
Yeah.
And it was there long before guys had a lab or were guys.
Yeah.
You know?
I think about, like, say, this whole plan of, they want to destroy everything, but even if even just minus the fact that they want to cause a supernova, everything would still be destroyed.
Yeah.
From, the sun or the second.
They're coming to get you, I hear the cops.
Yeah. No, I think it's because it's near
They're
Christmas.
Probably going to give you the apartment next to Vlad.
Just because
they're going to say, hey, he says he believes what Kealey says. Lock him up.
Yeah.
Lock him up. Maybe that's the way I'll find my 13 people. They'll all be in the same building.
Yeah,
In any event, Jared, it's time to feed the animals.
Is it snowing over there right now? It's snowing pretty hard right now.
No, it's not going to snow this week. We have about a foot of snow. It's 20 below zero Fahrenheit, or centigrade, which makes it a lot colder than 20 below in your world. But part of my task is to bring water, because there's no water during the wintertime, because I normally send water from the house through a hose. Can't have a hose in the wintertime. So I got to lug this stuff. bring them. The animals get to learn one lesson fairly quickly. When water arrives, drink. Because 15 minutes later it may be ice, and you'll have to wait till tomorrow, and you'll be a lot quicker tomorrow.
So this tax mist is coming on. So should I know anything or anything?
The what thing?
For tax mist, is there anything?
I still didn't get that word. Tax man?
Tax mess.
Tax mess.
Yes, tax mist. The tax mist is coming up.
Yeah.
Next week. Is there anything? I should know about?
Well, it's important because the 23rd of the month is really the day that is important when it's suggestive of birth of something. And we know that Easter is mistimed because 3 days after Good Friday is not Sunday morning. So the birth and the death should be taken into consideration. And that's what I'm thinking about is, are they really announcing a new Messiah at this period in time? And are they going to go through the crucifixion in the days to come around Easter? And for some reason, my intuition tells me that the 23rd of February is important, and the 14th day of April is important. 23rd of February is, of course, 9 days, I guess, after St. Valentine's Day, and the 14th of April is about 10 days after Easter. All of that is suggestive that the period that is in transition between 9 and 10 is important. And we just happen to be in transition between 2009 and 2010.
That word Easter, I just thought about it. It has the word star in it.
Yeah.
So and A&E, so it's like
don't forget star is a rat backwards.
Yeah. You so like
it's linked to par for the course.
Tartar's a tribe, African tribe.
Tar is what they put on roads.
Yeah, and I was reading about it. They say that at one time it was thought of as waste, and then they realized they could use it as roads. And then they tar people up.
Yeah, tar and feather.
Yeah, in the old days, who didn't believe.
Turn you into a chicken.
Because that's what the USA is, right? Cock-a-doodle-doo. Any cock-a-doodle.
Don't forget that Medusa, being the important word for wisdom, is also a word that means Middle USA, Med-USA. And the Middle USA, I put it to you, is around the Mississippi River, and at the top, the Michigan Peninsula, and at the bottom, New Orleans.
Yeah, word too. I looked up because they always mention the place. They said Middle Earth, and I thought about the word Mediterranean.
Yeah, that's the
Middle Earth.
Middle Earth, and they're going to get it too. But remember that in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a couple of years ago, they had an expressway seemingly jump sideways, 35 feet, crashed to the ground, and a number of people were killed.
Was that in Florida or Canada?
No, that's in Minnesota.
That's
up just near Canada at the end of Lake Superior. Mm-hmm. And I put it to you that was a test for the purpose of ground positioning. From underground, they would have created a blind thrust, which would have pushed upwards, made kind of a hill, therefore shoving the expressway sideways that happened to be sitting on the surface. That means that they could then go to the surface and do a GPS study and match it with what they believed they were at from underground without seeing it. And any adjustments in accuracy could then be made because they had their underground measurements then and their above-ground measurements. That would be something that they would always do, a test, before the actual event, as they did with 9/11, something like 10 years before the fact. They sent an airplane full of tourists from New Zealand crashing into a mountain on Antarctica. Well, here I suggest that the blind thrust is to make sure they're accurate, because when they do the next one, it will be under the Sault Ste. Marie area and Gore Bay and Blind River and French River, that whole area that will then release all of the water out of Lake Superior and send it crashing down into Ontario Provincial Police Headquarters in Orillia. And Owen Sound, Owen has a link to the owl. Mm-hmm. Sound has the link to 1-2. UN is 1, ND is second.
Those names are funny, Glenn. Yeah. There was a news anchor you mentioned in your post. Your name was Will Obey.
Yeah.
I will obey.
Yeah, I will obey. So keep all of those things in mind.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, Goat's got a drink.
Okay.
Bye for now.
All right.